Martin. Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm going to just give you a little bit of a background in the next 15 minutes to the map to show you what it is, firstly. Quick show of hands, who's seen the map of medicine? So about half. Okay. So basically, we'll talk about what is the map, the background to getting evidence into practice. Is there a problem that we have as a medical system or a healthcare system as a whole? The challenge of information overload and the issue of, for a lot of doctors and nursing staff and allied healthcare professionals is, how do I know what I don't know? And I need to be kept up to date very, very sort of in short, small snippets because I'm very busy. The issue of silos of care and pertinent to the existing economic environment we're all going to be operating in, particularly from next year, is if we put systems in like the map, does this actually cost more or less, or is it cost neutral? And then I'll hand over to Dr. Amir Hanan, who's a general practitioner who's been using the map for some time now in his practice. Then to James Walker, leads the map of medicine for the Northwest SHA. And then finally you'll hear from Asad, who's going to talk about the secondary care perspective. So what is the map? Basically, it's a visualization of the idealized patient journey through our healthcare system. We're living in ever more specialized healthcare silos. We're responding to information overload by super specializing. We have really no choice. We have orthopedic surgeons who now just do knee operations. And even I was in the States a few months ago, and I came across an orthopedic surgeon who just does anterior ligaments inside the knee, which is extraordinary. The map is really a starting point for a clinically led redesign of the healthcare service. Locally driven, but with access to the national pathways that are represented in the map. And it's really a system that's there for local adaptation. And I'll come back to that and talk about why we spent a huge amount of resource on the ability to localize the map out of a single repository. And finally, it's really important that it will integrate in future with whatever electronic medical record systems a local organization wants to put in. So we're already working with the likes in primary care of EMIS, System C, TPP, and so on. And hopefully when the electronic medical record system goes to hospitals, well, we know already that because it's gone through a national licensing approach for England and Wales, it's been future-proof, so to speak. It uses open international standards in the underlying architecture. So this is what the map looks like. It's very simple. It's a visualization of the patient journey. It separates it into primary care, which are these green nodes. We call these thought flows. This is clinical thought flow. And it's separated out, as you'll see if you want to have a play at the end. I'm not going to do it live now because they're recording and I've got to keep both my hands busy, so to speak. But you can play with it at the back where they've got separate layers of information relevant to each point on the map. So each node, so to speak. And it takes you from primary care. This is suspected deep vein thrombosis. You can work through. Now, if you are experienced, you know what you're doing, you know this is very likely to be a DVT, and you want to make the referral, then you can hit the button here with a referral number, little R on it. And that, in most parts of the map, the live map, will provide you with the referral template. And the node preceding that would be the referral criteria and what is expected in primary care to work the patient up appropriately so that when they get to the hospital, they've had all the appropriate tests, the consultant doesn't need to redo tests, and so on. It makes for a more efficient journey through the system. And then you can then say to the patient, I've made the referral, this is what you can expect in the hospital. And this is what we call the blue zone. And again, with the nodes with the information. But you'll see the ability to add this little post-it note, a yellow post-it note, which is your personal note on the map. And different clinicians, nursing staff, doctors use it for different things. So in primary care, a lot of the docs use it for their personal development planning. They make a note against the map and say, PDP, Personal Development Plan, 2010, and make a little note, and then save it. So at the end of the year, when they want to go back, they can search the map of medicine, but search function. If you can use Google, you can use the map. Then you can basically search for PDP 2010, and it'll pull up all your little comments that you made throughout the year on the map. That's an example of use for this little post note. You can also put an L button. That's a local administration button, which then pulls up a different layer. You can see these 3 different layers in the map. And that'll give you local information that links you to a local pretest probability scoring system because locally you've decided that you want to do something innovative. So fundamentally important to this approach, the localizability, is the question of not stifling innovation, because that's the last thing we want to do. So the challenges, when we started building the map at the Royal Free Hospital together with UCL 9 years ago, we've been on quite a journey ourselves, it was really about addressing 4 key challenges, although there were 3 at the time. The fourth one, which is the financial sustainability, wasn't really foremost in our minds and at the time. But certainly we had to address clinical belief systems about standard operating procedures, checklists. We don't want to be feeling like we're driven by cookbook medicine. Number 1, it's dangerous. Number 2, you've trained a long time to actually look after your patient, and you want a system that is open and that you can move around where you want. And that's key to the map interface that you saw before, is that you don't have to go through each step. If you know where you want to go, you can just search for it using the Google search function, or you can just go select the node you want and look for the information you need. Secondly, so we had to change that and answer the question, well, a lot of clinicians say, well, what is the problem? Is there a problem? And I'll come back to that. So this is there a problem? New England Journal data from 2003 and 2007 collated by Professor Brunsman, who heads up patient safety in Australia, is an anaesthetist. And he showed that 30 conditions, this is actually Beth McGlynn's work that he collated, but against 30 common conditions, if you look at atrial fibrillation, against the percentage of recommended care received, you'll see that this is data from the United States, but our data is a little bit better, I have to say, but not a huge amount better, is about running at less than 30% of patients who are getting appropriate anticoagulation when they've got atrial fibrillation, which is the gold standard. If you have no contraindication to taking anticoagulation, if you've got chronic atrial fibrillation, you should be anticoagulated to prevent stroke. So we have a problem in that very few patients are actually getting that standard of care. Now, there are a number of reasons for that. I won't go into those today in the interest of time. But suffice to say, even if you look at something like diabetes, less than 50% of patients are getting the gold standard, are getting an appropriate foot care, appropriate check of renal function, appropriate cardiovascular risk assessments, and appropriate care for their eyes and retinas, which is astonishing. And this is in a system which spends more than twice the amount of money we do per head capita. So it's not a money problem. Okay, this is just an issue of our system and the fact that I believe that we're working in ever more fragmented silos of care, and where actually patients have got problems, multi-system problems like diabetes, that need something different. And so we need to talk about closing this gap. So there's clearly a problem. I mean, I don't think many people would argue that anymore. Of course, in your own individual specialty, there won't be a problem because you can stay up to date. But overall, in terms of getting everyone on the same page, it's a problem. The other issue is information technology overload. I'm busy, particularly relevant to primary care, but also on a busy post-intake ward round in a hospital. If you're a cardiologist doing the post-intake ward round, how on earth can you keep up to date with all the information in gastroenterology and dermatology for the 36 patients you've got to see in your post-intake ward round? And you're busy, and you haven't got time to look up things, so less is more. So the issue here is, of course, our random access capacity memory of the human brain, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, is 200 megabytes. This is from Frank Davis, a neuroscientist at UCSF. Okay, and we're trying to deal with this. Over 1,000 clinical research articles coming out every day. Which one is the one that tells you about thalidomide or COX-2 inhibitor disasters that killed 10,000 patients in the United States a few years ago? And which one tells you about the amazing new therapy like dabigatran, which is now being used to replace warfarin? And there's a very recent New England Journal article showing that it's safe, effective, and you don't need as much follow-up, and it's actually also much cheaper. How many people know about that? Because that's about DVT and post-DVT and atrial fibrillation management. And if you're a gastroenterologist, how would you know about that? So the key then is to, and then answering this one, I don't know what I don't know, but it takes too long to keep up to date with everything. But we would argue that, and this is some data that we did just to see how long it would take, to use the map unintegrated into the system in a busy GP practice. And it turns out it's 2 to 3 minutes if you use it once a month for a session. And this is actually a number of GPs, in fact, Dr. Amir Hanan was one of the participants here. For 2 to 3 minutes, you can use the map whether you think you need it or not in primary care, it turns out that here's 13.4% times you'll change practice based on 747 clinical consultations. That's astounding. So again, it goes back to the problem, well, there is a problem, but we believe that with that interface and with integration into the screen, the computer that you're using, it's possible to learn very quickly.